welcome to all of you to the social media and human trafficking presentation put on by the Washington County Anti-Trafficking Advocates as well as the Watertown Police Department. So my first shout out has to go to Sergeant Nieto because he was the one who asked for this, and I was lucky enough to say I do know somebody, and that would be Wendy Smith from Hartford. If you don't know me, I am Kim Italiano. I am the Community Service Officer for the Watertown Police Department. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Wendy for our presentation.
Well, welcome everybody. I'm so excited that so many people showed up. Thank you, Kim and Sergeant Nieto, for getting the ball started and rolling and inviting me to come and talk on this subject, social media and human trafficking. So yeah, my husband and I, my name is Wendy. My husband and I founded the Washington County Anti-Trafficking Advocates 10 years ago to educate our community about the topic of human trafficking. I grew up in Milwaukee. I lived there till I was about my mid-20s. And I never heard about sex trafficking or human trafficking. Nobody ever talked about it. I didn't know anything about it. Fast forward many years later, I ended up out in Hartford. My husband and I opened up a gift shop. And one day, Deacon Steve with the Franciscan Peacemakers walked into our store. That's an organization that serves women who are being trafficked and sexually exploited in Milwaukee. And they had started a social enterprise where they made soaps, and they were asking if we wanted to sell them, or he was asking if we wanted to sell them in our store. I didn't know anything about human trafficking, but I eventually started learning through him. And what happened when I started going down that rabbit hole of education just absolutely shocked me. I thought, I lived in Milwaukee. I never heard about this. I had friends who bust in from the inner city. I lived on the north side of Milwaukee, and I'm like, oh, they must have been so vulnerable. And then I learned, no, it's not just happening in the city. It's happening in the country. It's happening in the suburbs. It's happening all over the place. Big cities, little cities, townships, little communities, doesn't matter. That process for me was just life-changing. I started talking to people about it, and we decided we needed to do an educational event, presentation, because I'm like, this is important. If I didn't know about it, I'm sure a lot of people don't. Let's do this presentation. We had lots of speakers, and we did it at our Hartford library. During that presentation, we had a packed house. We had about 80 people there, and this young, beautiful blonde got up and just very emotional, started just purging her story and her information and thanking people for being there. She was a victim of sex trafficking. She grew up in Hartford. She knew some of the people in the audience. She went to our schools in Hartford. And her pathway into trafficking was her heroin addiction. So after that event, I go back to my gift shop. And within the next few days, just so many people coming in and wanting to learn more about this topic. I mean, I really couldn't have planted somebody better in that audience because I know that many people just kind of default to what does a human trafficking or sex trafficking or labor trafficking victim look like? And it isn't a typical white, blonde girl from the suburbs, that I know. So that was shocking for a lot of people, and a lot of people wanted to learn more. That's when we started we started educating people, started having monthly presentations ultimately. We started our nonprofit, and really our focus is, at that point, we really focused on raising awareness and educating about human trafficking topics. We offer advocacy. We've gone to court hearings, given rides, done other things with survivors, walked alongside the families. Also resources. We have tons of resources out on the table out there, but also we have networked for 10 years in this realm. So we always say that if we cannot help you, we know somebody who can help you. So we always say reach out if you have any questions or need help, and unless it's an emergency. So now though, with our technology changing and the social media exploding, we have really started focusing our education on the prevention education side of things. So I like to say, if you look at it like a river of trauma, we've got on the far end We've got law enforcement, social services, mental health professionals pulling these victims of exploitation out of this river trying to save them. They are overwhelmed. So we have found our lane up on the prevention end. So we're trying to keep people from getting in that river of trauma. Right? We're trying to get them the education because statistics say prevention, education, and conversations are what is going to keep people safe, not just kids, but adults as well. So our main purpose of this event, I'm going to talk a lot about kids, but not all victims of human trafficking are children, but that's the focus. That's our target demographic for most of our presentations. But keeping kids safe online, understanding the threats. The most important thing is to understand what the threats are. So we all, I think, could say, if we have kids, we have said to our kids, be careful what you do online. Don't do this. Don't do that. Stay away from that. Don't do that. But we don't think in the terms of the predators coming to our kids, right? We're like, oh, my kid's safe online. I know my kid wouldn't do that. I know my kid wouldn't do that. But we don't think about the kids having this device, these devices, with the portal to like the most nefarious things of the world, the most nefarious people of our world, while they're sitting in the bedroom, while they're sitting, on the couch. So understanding the threats, knowing what they are up against is super important. Also knowing how to respond. You got a kid that comes up to you and says, I was online and this thing happened, and if you respond like, what were you thinking? You're going to lose them, right? They're never going to come to you again. And if you're talking about somebody else's kid who had something happen, you're like, why would they ever post that online? How could they ever do that? Your kids are listening to you. They're not going to come to you with a problem or an issue or something scary if they know what you already think about that. If you're already victim blaming somebody else's kid, your kids aren't going to come to you. So you have to remember that you have to respond to things appropriately. And that means understanding the topics. Having a safety plan. I can't emphasize this enough, that having the conversation and talking about if something happens, this is what we're going to do. This is what you should do. This is what I'm going to do. This is what we're going to do. It's very important that the kids and the adults have that conversation together because it's a two-part thing. And statistically, in this room, there has been some exploitation online already. Maybe something's happening now. Maybe it has happened. Maybe it's going to happen tonight or tomorrow. All right? So we're here to say you're not alone. There's plenty of people in this room that understand this topic. There's law enforcement, there's social services, there's people that are working in this realm all the time that understand, and they're here to help. There's lots of resources available. Okay, so starting with a question, where do you think kids are most vulnerable? Where do you think a predator is most likely to target kids? And if you're brave, you can go ahead and say what you think, but just in your head, hanging out in the food court at a busy shopping mall, shooting hoops at a playground, riding their bike through a neighborhood, or chatting on their computer at home. So where is a predator most likely to target kids? What is it? All of the above. Is that what you just said? Yeah, it's very true. But, so you're right, it's all of the above, but the most likely place that people are, where the most exploitation is happening, where predators are finding them the easiest is online, on the computer, on the phones. But yes, things happen at all of these places, but now with technology being the way it is, kids having the devices so young, so immature yet, so uneducated, because by the way, they don't teach this type of the scams, and the information that they really need is not really being taught enough and extensively in the schools yet. So in a recent study, and this is by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, they're the authority on this, 88% out of 5,000 people who were surveyed stated that they agreed with the A through C. They felt that stranger abductions were the biggest concern for children's safety. So riding the bike in the neighborhood, going to the park, being at the mall, stranger abduction, grabbing the kid, running, throwing them in the white van, whatever, with very little mention about social media. So the real fact is stranger abductions are of the rarest kind. Less than 1%, 1%, or even there's a number that says less than 1% of reported missing children cases to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children are stranger abductions. Right? It does happen, but it's very rare. What does this tell us? It tells us that most of the public does not, 88% does not understand the scams that are happening online to our kids. I think that's humongous. This number is relatively new last year, and I use it all the time because I think it's very, very important to understand that. So online child exploitation has exploded along with the use of the technology. Social media platforms are the perfect way for predators to connect with our kids. Why? Because of the lack of understanding of the dangers. All right, and the specific scams. I cannot emphasize that enough, how important it is to understand how these scams work. Easily accessible. Kids have the devices. If they don't have one, their friends have them. If you take it away because they're grounded, like I did when my daughter did something wrong in high school, by the next day she had 2 more phones that her friends had borrowed her. So like the access is there. They can get on the devices. The false sense of security. So people just think they're safe when they're sitting at home and you're home and the kids are home and we're like, thank goodness they got home safe from school, everybody's good, everybody's safe. But it's such a false sense of security because before something really bad happens online, typically there's the grooming process, which we're going to talk more about that. And that can happen while you're sitting on your phone and they're on their phone sitting on the couch, you're watching TV, maybe they're in their bedroom, whatever. Backseat of the car, where you feel they are the safest. All of that grooming process can be happening if you're not paying attention and not understanding what's happening online. If lack of monitoring by adults, especially overnight, and this is where I'm going to do my public service announcement. I'm going to say it publicly, no kids should have their cell phones, computers, or devices in their bedroom overnight. No kids should there's no reason to have them overnight. That's where some of the worst things happen. All right, so there should be a check-in at night. If that's the only parent tip you take home tonight, I want that tip to be the tip. Because like our dads all said, I know mine did, nothing good happens after midnight when you're out at the bars or something. Nothing good happens when the kids have their devices in their room overnight. Because we're going to learn more about sextortion and some of the other things that happen. And typically it's overnight. And when the parents are sleeping and are of no help. You don't see the red flags, you don't see the signs, you don't see any of that stuff. Any of the warning signs, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you know all the warning signs. You're not going to see it because it can happen very quickly overnight. So that's really important. Our over-sexualized culture breaks down inhibitions. I mean, everything is over-sexualized. So to kids, somebody asking for a naked picture is not a big deal. For us, it's shocking, but for kids, it's part of their culture and part of everything. Everything is over-sexualized, though, songs, lyrics, commercials, shows, movies, whatever. And what they're seeing, and the advertising that they're seeing in their algorithms on their social media. Unsafe app features and big tech greeds. Big tech has the technology. So when a kid is like, let's say an app, you have to be 13. To be on this app. And a kid lies and says, and maybe they're 9, but they say, yes, I'm 13. They're on the app. That's all it takes. Big tech has the technology to go, Based on your other activity, your digital footprint, I know you're not 13. I know you're 9 or 10. They know that they're younger. That's how much that's how smart technology is, right? So they know all of that. But they're not going to deter any users because the more users, the more advertisers, the more money. It's all greed. And weak laws to hold predators and platforms accountable. And some of that is changing. I could go into that whole thing, would be another presentation. Some of the statistics are shocking, I think. So this is reported by BARC, and this is an online monitoring tool for parents that you can download this app. And there is a fee for that, but BARC does so much research to update their app to make sure it's got all the features that they need according to what is happening and what the kids are doing online. So they do a lot of research and interviews and all of that kind of stuff. So Approximately 20% of kids have been sexually solicited online. I think that number's a little bit low, but shockingly, this is the part that's shocking, 75% didn't tell a parent, and up to 90% of the parents remain unaware of such inappropriate content. And the reason why that's so important is I have had thousands, okay, I'm exaggerating, many conversations with parents who say, I know I can trust my son online or my daughter. I know they wouldn't do this. I know they wouldn't do that. And I know they would come to me if there was an issue. I know that we have this really open conversation, this open relationship. I've heard it over and over and over. But this number tells us that those kids are not actually telling us the things that are happening online. And let's just think about why. What is going to happen if they told us all of the stuff, all of the junk that they're seeing online? We would change the way we're reacting to it, right? We would amp up our honing skills. We would be learning more. We would be paying more attention. We would be asking more questions. Maybe even not letting them online. Maybe even taking their phones away or not letting them participate in certain platforms. So we have to understand that these are still kids. Like, we can't expect them to be adults. They are kids, and they're not going to tell us everything because they don't want to be taken off of the thing that's fun for them. So approximately 1 in 17 minors have personally experienced sextortion. This is really scary. Again, any number I think probably most people know by now, any sexual type crime is always underreported. I mean, it's just an embarrassing thing. Who wants to report that? Adults don't want to report that. So kids aren't reporting it either if there's any, and that includes being online and something sexual happens. 14% of kids have met online predators in person. So remember, okay, 14% of kids have met online predators in person, and nearly 75% of them did so more than once. Now remember, they're not meeting a predator in their head. They're meeting somebody that they know. It's not a stranger. It's not a predator. It's someone they've been talking to online, and they've created a trusting relationship with them. To us, it's a stranger. But to them, that's their culture, that's their world. They feel like they know them. So they will meet them in person once they get to know them online. And that's kind of scary. Just a couple quick numbers. Between 21 and 23, there was an explosion in reports of online enticement with an increase of more than 300%. I think that's exploded. In 2023, 36.2 million reports of suspected child sexual exploitation online to the cyber tip line. That's the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's tip line. So these reports contain over 105 million images, videos, and other files. And I like to point this out because I want people to think about who do we think has to view these files when it becomes evident that there's a case that needs to be investigated, right? Law enforcement has to go through those files. The people working at the cyber tip line, the people who are working on these internet crimes against children cases, people have to actually view these images. Imagine having that job. So if you know an ICAC, an Internet Crimes Against Children officer, make sure you thank them because it's a very difficult job. And that's a secondary trauma that these people are enduring. So it's more than just the victim who's being traumatized, but these people who have to work these cases have a lot on their plate. Okay, just so we're clear, CSAM, child sexual abuse material. I like to point this out because we hear a lot about child pornography, because that is the legal term still. So you hear a lot of that in the news or whatever, the child pornography, but it's called, the correct term is child sexual abuse material outside of the legal term. That is the term we use, because that's what it is. It's child abuse material. Online child sexual exploitation, like this is just an umbrella term. So we're going to talk about specifics, but this is a broad range of criminal acts where technology is used to exploit or victimize a minor for sexual gratification or other financial gain of some sort. So that's a real broad term. So for example, an adult engaging a child in a chat about sexual acts, that is online child sexual exploitation. So I know people like to minimize, oh, they were just chatting on on the messenger platform. If you got an adult talking to a child about sexual things, that's exploitation. That's serious, and that should be reported. Lots of things happening online. We're not going to go into all of these because we don't have time. Inappropriate content galore. Of course, online privacy. We all know that things can happen there. Online enticement is a biggie. Sexting. I wish we had more time to get to talk about sexting, but because it's a big part of the problem. I know that kids think it's not a big deal. They send the picture, a nude picture. They get a picture. That's kind of their culture. It's not all that big of a deal to them. But predators bank on that culture. I mean, that is how they are so successful. They know that these kids, they know they're not going to be shocked once they create a relationship of trust with those kids and then ask for a picture. Anybody does that to us, we're going to be like, shocked. Not in the kids' world, because us adults have created a different world for the kids. It's a whole different culture. So sexting is very important. There's lots of consequences. And then there's sextortion, which we are going to get into, and cyberbullying. I just want to say I wish I could talk more about that because that's a real problem. But just put this thought in your head. Like back in the day, if we got bullied or somebody got bullied at school, you could go home. You could play with the dog. You could climb a tree. You could have dinner with your family. You work on your homework, watch a TV show. Yeah, maybe you go back the next day, get bullied by the same bully. But now with the technology, these kids are getting bullied all day long, all night long, and if you let them have the devices in the room, all night long, literally. Like, imagine the mental health crisis these kids are going to be facing with that much pressure day after day if it's a severe bullying case, if it's a cyberbullying case. It's really, really an ugly thing, and that is something to take seriously. Scams using AI-generated audio, video, or images. So I don't know how much anybody knows about AI. I have forced myself to learn more about it. But one thing I have learned that is scary, it takes about 3 seconds of audio for these scammers to put into the program your 3-second voice clip that they got when they scam called you. And you're like, who is this? What? Why are you calling me? What, blah, blah. And boom, they got your voice. Then they put in a script that they want you to say. Then they send it off to your grandma because they've been following you on social media, so they know who your people are. So then grandma gets the call and says, hey, grandma, this is Wendy. I'm in trouble. I'm at the Watertown jail. I don't know. Please send money to here so I can get out. I can't stay on the line. They only give me 30 seconds to talk, so please get the money there ASAP. Click, hang up. Okay, they can do that easy. We've got a situation in our community right now of somebody who is scammed by Shania Twain. If you look it up, it's old news, but not to this poor guy. And he lost his house. He lost everything, and he's living. Well, he was in his car, now he's in a motel and hoping to get to the net from day to day. That was all done by an AI-generated video, live conversation, which is a little more complicated to do, but it can be done. So the person, he was convinced that she wanted him to move to Las Vegas with her, and she was in love, and he was in love, and his wife had just died recently. He was very vulnerable, and he put that out there on social media someplace, like, how do you stop the pain without drugs or alcohol? And Shania came to the rescue. And that's how AI, it's so real, it's so scary, and it's happening. Nudify apps, yeah, you could be fully clothed. Maybe you posted a picture of, or a kid posts a picture, or an adult of you with your family. Well, put it through the Nudify apps, and now your clothes are gone. So it doesn't even have to be that you are sending the nude pictures. Violent online networks, as if everything wasn't bad enough. Now it's really like an organized crime. This is a whole network of people who are exploiting kids in a different way. They're tricking them into things like self-harm, harming pets, harming siblings, abusing siblings, drugs, suicide attempts, things that are really extreme. And they get this video, and then they say, if you don't do more, I'm going to share. Then they put that in their dark web and kudos from all their buddies for, look at all the content I got from this one. And they get them to do all sorts of really horrendous things. And then they threaten them, if you don't do more, I'm going to show your family this, I'm going to show your family that. It's really sick what's happening right now. That's a big, big deal. And I saw that there was some arrests in that network. Anyways, that's a whole nother, I can't go there. But human trafficking, you're going to hear a statistic about human trafficking that is shocking, so we're going to get to that in a bit. But a lot of that is happening online now. Well, all aspects of human trafficking, and that's why I'm here today, social media and human trafficking, are happening online. False profiles, approximately 50% of profiles are fake. Here's a video to kind of show how that is so easy to do, how these predators can really just look like somebody really friendly and familiar, but
oh, yeah.
How does it work?
Okay, well, it's pretty simple, really. There's no secret to it. Basically, you just go in, go to places where people like to go, you know, on the internet, and you pick someone.
Oh, we're just friends, but he's so cool. I mean, we talk all the time. He's on the JV football team, and he's in that science club that I've been wanting to get into, so, and we have some mutual friends.
Also, you have an instant level of trust if there's a mutual friend that you can clue in on.
So I haven't seen him around, but I think we might have bumped into each other a time or two.
Once you get them to connect with something familiar, it's all good.
He's a really cool guy, and he's super cute and really funny, and we like all the same movies.
Everyone wants to list their favorite books, their favorite movies, their favorite places to eat. So you clue in on those and you can instantly find some common ground with someone.
I'm really excited to meet him.
What next?
Well, once I have her hooked, I just have to reel her in.
He says it's a surprise, so who knows, but either way, he said we're gonna have a ton of fun tonight.
Promised her we'd have some fun today, so I just wanted to show her how much I like her.
It's gonna be super fun, and we're gonna probably just get to know each other and, you know, go out, so it'll be fun. I'm excited.
so the thing that always is so sad to me about this video is that you see that she is really pretty innocent in the whole thing. It's really not, to her it's not a stranger. Again, we can't imagine how a kid would meet somebody in person that they just met online. But to them, it's not a stranger like we're thinking stranger. They have established this friendship now. They had people in common, they had things in common, and there was a trust that was built. So for her, it's not a stranger, it's a friend. The grooming process is everything in these situations. So grooming is just like a deliberate process. Basically, they're preparing this person for a particular event or activity, right? Just so they can exploit them. And this can happen in anything. And this can be trafficking, but it also can be sextortion. It can be whatever type of vulnerability they're trying to exploit them for, they're going to groom them for. So it just by doing that, it allows the predator to kind of overcome the kid's natural tendencies to have that gut feeling like something doesn't feel right here. But then they continue with that grooming process, building that trust, and it kind of oversteps that boundary. It just, the kids are like, well, they're really nice. They're like she said, oh, he's really nice. So they can be anybody. The groomers can be somebody you know. It can be somebody you don't know. All right, this is super important, the grooming process. It can happen over a long period of time. It can happen only a few minutes, or a few hours or minutes, really. But here up at the top, targeting. That targeting process, whatever the scam is, whoever the target demographic is, and whatever the vulnerability that they're looking for, they target them. They look, they search, they do their homework. And when they find the person posting the certain things and whatever displaying the vulnerability that's going to, like for instance, this scammer that scammed this guy out of his house, so Shania Twain, was looking for a man who was lonely, perhaps lost his wife, whatever his vulnerability was, that was for that scam. The predator was looking for something different, a girl who just wanted to make friends and connect and was flattered by his niceness. Targeting is everything. Once they target them and they find the person they think is going to fit the bill, then they have to figure out how they're going to gain access. They create the false profiles. They send out 50 friend requests to their friends. And all they need is 1 or 2 people to accept that friend request. So now when the kid's gets a friend request, us adults do the same thing. You're like, I don't know who that is. You go to their page. Oh, so-and-so knows them, so-and-so knows them. Oh, they must be fine. Okay, I'll accept the friend request. But you don't really know who they are. That's what they do. That's how they gain access, because they create this false sense of, oh, it's okay. Then the grooming, the trust development. It could be flattery, it can be gifts, it can be games, it can happen with kids who are on the gaming platforms. Whatever it takes, that trust development starts taking place. Then the desensitization, so they start talking about sexual encounters maybe, or sending pictures. And then it's back to the unicorns and rainbows and happy stuff, and then back to kind of the other stuff. They go back and forth until they kind of break down that inhibition. And then once they get that picture sent, they got them. As the guy said, I've got full control. I got them. Because now, if you try to block them or get out of it, now they're going to threaten you. Hey, I already got this content, so you might as well keep giving it, because I'm going to share it with your pastor, with your dad, with your mom, with your coach, all the people that you're going to be horrified if it happens. There's a few signs if this grooming is taking place over a period of time. Your kids are going to receive gifts. Maybe they're going to have a new purse. Maybe in human trafficking, the trafficking situation, there's different signs to look for. But in general, you're going to notice different things. Kids are going to minimize the screen, right? Something's not right. Something's not right. They're not doing something right online. It doesn't mean that they're being groomed. Maybe they're just looking at something they're not supposed to look at. But it's a sign. Rejecting family and friends. One thing the groomers or predators do to build the trust, they want you to come to them. They want to be your go-to person, their safe person. So they're going to try to isolate you and get you to kind of reject your family. The people who actually are there for you, they're going to find reasons to tell you that those people don't care like I care. They're going to get you to reject some of those people. Getting upset when not online, and you're going to see a video that's going to explain that. Getting numbers, calling unknown numbers, getting calls from unknown numbers. Well, we're all getting calls from all unknown numbers, right, nowadays. But if it's a local number, it's something to look into and see whose number that is. All right, before I go to the next slide, does anybody want to take a stab at what some of the most dangerous apps are? Yes? Snapchat.
Do you talk to kids at school, and how young?
I go wherever I'm asked to talk. I will go wherever, and they should be taught age appropriately as soon as they're using a device. If it's second grade, if it's kindergarten, they should be being taught certain, not all of this, but certain things age appropriately, and those conversations should change as they grow.
Is there a way to get to parents about this?
Have them come to these presentations.
Watch for red flags?
Yeah, lots of resources out there on the tables. I know myself, I've got these packets that has absolutely, I'm not going to be able to cover everything, obviously, tonight, but absolutely everything you want to talk about almost in these packets. And I know Join the Movement's got packets and resources over there on internet safety and human trafficking probably. So there's a couple tables. There's a bag, like you see that blue bag right next to you. Yep, that one, I've got those on my table there. Load it up with resources and give them to the people that you're concerned for, because that's the best way. Education is the #1 way to keep kids safe online. Does anybody else want to take a stab at some of the dangerous apps? TikTok? What? Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram. Okay, so there are some platforms that are trending that have more exploitation happening on them, but it's kind of a trick question, because any chat platform is dangerous. It can be dangerous, and that includes gaming. So any chat platform can be dangerous, but yes, there are some apps, the Snapchat and TikTok, some of those aren't so great. Instagram is a pretty popular one. Okay, we're going to transition directly to the sex trafficking topic itself. These numbers are from during COVID and just shortly after, within those couple years, COVID and post-COVID, there was just a let's just say there was just a skyrocket of online exploitation happening, all right? 800% increase, some stats said. Service providers were saying, ones that were working with victims of sex trafficking, that 80 to 100% of their clients were exploited online. 83% of active 2020 sex trafficking cases involved online solicitation. So this was overwhelmingly the most common area traffickers were using to sell or to solicit buyers, excuse me. But here, number 42% there. This is one of my favorite and not favorite statistics, but 42% of trafficking victims who met their trafficker online never met them in person. So when I talk to people and they have the idea in their head what trafficking looks like, and it's borders and overseas, like this should blow your mind that it can happen while their kids are sitting at home in their bedroom. We're going to talk about a little bit more about that. 65% of underage victims of active sex trafficking cases recruited in 2020 were done so through Facebook. It was number one, 65%, 14% through Instagram, 8% through Snapchat. This is 2020, but those numbers are pretty high, are pretty solid still. Those platforms are still used, and I would think TikTok, and there's a couple others now. Well, there's lots. Well, again, anything with a chat platform, but those are the biggies. I'm going to show this video. It's going to give you the whole overview of sex trafficking. It's about 3 minutes, I think, and then it's just going to give you all the stuff that you need to know, and then we're going to take it from there. I hope. If it doesn't, that's okay. I got stuff to cover myself. I don't know why this is the one video I seem to have a little trouble with. Maybe it just needs to catch up. Try it one more time. All right, that's fine. See, I'm prepared for that kind of thing. All right. Human trafficking is an estimated $150 billion industry. So obviously, cash is king. Money, money, money. It's all about the money. I want to make sure that people understand the difference between human smuggling and human trafficking, right? Because sometimes people get that very confused. Human smuggling is a crime that involves moving a person across a country's border with that person's consent in violation of immigration laws. So it's still an illegal thing, but it's moving them, it's transporting them, and it's with their consent. Versus human trafficking, which involves exploiting someone whether it's labor or a commercial sex act. But this does not need for anybody to be moved. As you heard that statistic, 42% in the bedroom at home can be, you don't even have to leave your home typically. This does not involve having to move them across any borders or across anywhere. So human trafficking, human smuggling, very different. Victims of human trafficking can be anyone, anywhere. People have a mindset. When I did that presentation in Hartford, I know that people had I had lots of conversations afterwards. People had a very specific mindset, who they felt a victim of human trafficking, or specifically sex trafficking, because that was what we were talking about. And they did not anticipate it to be, I wonder if that's the video. I'm just going to see. I'm just curious. Oh, interesting. It just disappears. It's like, no, I'm not doing it. All right, fine. Basically, that video is all the stuff that's here. So I was prepared because I am always prepared for technology not to work. The main things you want to talk about, like the trafficking, the human trafficking that we see here mostly in the States involves the sex trafficking, labor trafficking, includes forced labor, domestic servitude. Yes, that is happening. This domestic servitude, I mean, this is the type of thing that we don't anticipate things like this happening. We don't see it. We think, how is that possible? But these are things that are happening in our own small communities, and then they get away with it because people don't really know what to look for with that. They're hidden in plain sight, forced to work in homes as nannies, maids, or domestic help. So maybe they came over illegally, and now they've had their papers taken from them, and now they're saying to them, you got to stay and you got to work this off. You got to work off X amount of dollars or hours before I'm going to set you free, so to speak. And it's never enough work, and they're afraid to go to law enforcement, and that's a really big thing. Forced labor, victims made to work for little or no pay, often forced to manufacture or grow products that we use and consume every day. I always say chocolate is one of the, well, and this is not in our country necessarily, it's outside of our country, but if you're a chocolate lover, that's one of those crops that it's like one of the top users of child labor, illegal child labor, child trafficking, labor trafficking, sorry, I couldn't get that out. Is the farming of the cocoa beans. So like that's a big thing, the stuff that we use every day, we don't realize. Sex trafficking, of course, victims are manipulated or forced against their will to engage in sex for money. However, that's not always just money. It can also be anything of value. It can be a place to live. It can be drugs, if there's addictions. It can be for food, like, hey, anyone can be a victim, but there are certain demographics that are more vulnerable. Kids in the foster system or runaway kids. I will say this until I'm blue in the face, but I don't see it as much, but always there is a post, when there's a post of a kid that's run away. I used to see somebody post, oh, they'll come back when they get hungry. Guess what? No, they won't, because somebody's going to find them, and they're going to feed them, and they're going to love them, and they're going to give them a place to stay, and then eventually they're going to have to pay up for what they were provided. So it's not always an exchange for money, it's something of value. It can happen to anyone, any age, race, gender, sex, ethnicity, nationality, immigration status, socioeconomic class. Typically, the sex trafficking victim is around 14 to 17, but it's not always that way. All right, this is my little graphics here. I wanted to just this is a lot of information, but I wanted to point out in the sex trafficking industry, some of the top industries where you're going to find these victims, and that's pimp-controlled prostitution, commercial front brothels. There was just a story that I have here that I wish I had time to go off on, just how many illicit massage parlors are in our communities across the United States. They say there's more illicit massage parlors than McDonald's Now, I find that number hard, but I have an article. So I'm only going off the article. But we don't know it. It's in plain sight. We don't see it. We see the McDonald's, but we don't see the illicit massage parlors. So commercial front brothels, so commercial front, so that could be a massage parlor, that could be a restaurant, escort services, pornography. People think that's one of those industries that is, adult entertainment. But how do you know they're not being trafficked? Many of those performers are being exploited. Stripping, it's kind of it's the big entryway. It can be. I mean, you figure you're putting, I have survivor friends that many of them that's how they started in the stripping in the gentleman's club, which I'd never understood that word. But so, they had intentions of dancing and making some extra money. But imagine throwing them in the, being thrown into a middle of a shark tank and expecting those sharks not to eat you, because that's basically what's going on there. So the intentions aren't there to have that happen to you. Most of these women I don't think any of us who knows any survivors would say, oh yeah, I know a survivor who woke up one day and said, I want to be a trafficking victim. I want to be a prostitute. It's kind of like that frog in the pot of warm water. Like you throw a frog into a pot of boiling water, they're going to jump out. But if you throw them into a pot of warm water, they're going to swim around for a while, and you turn that heat up, and it's going to start boiling, and they're not going to have a chance to get out. So before they even saw it coming, they are boiled to death. And that's how I like to analyze some of these women and men who get into this life. Where are these victims recruited? Mostly on the internet, social media, but also schools, malls, streets, parks, kind of like the question in the beginning of our presentation. Labor trafficking, top industries, domestic work, restaurants, food services, peddling rings. I own a gift shop. I've had people come through. Yes? You have a question?
I don't want to cut you off.
Oh, yes.
On the previous slide, the average number of times a person is sold in one day, 10 to 15 times?
Yes, that is.
What is that?
So, so somebody gets into that life and they have a boyfriend who is going to give them the world. And this is typical for this type of thing. They're going to give them the world. They are groomed. They have a relationship, and maybe she's stripping at a club. And he says, you know what, I know how we're going to be able to make a little more money. And you and I then, we can start our own life together. If you go into the champagne room, take care of a couple guys a night, we can make some big bucks. Well, that's a line of continuum. Before you know it, these girls are forced to do that 10 to 15 times a day. Yes?
Can I share a story?
Yes.
Do you mind?
No?
So I worked with a victim who was one of 27 girls. She was sold to her trafficker by her boyfriend. She was taken out east and sold, and she was one of 27 girls. She earned her trafficker $10,000 a week. That's how much she was sold. So when she came to me, she was just coming off the drugs that he had controlled her with. And she couldn't sleep because every time she closed her eyes, she relived every single rape that had happened to her while she was in captivity.
Thank you for sharing that. Thanks for asking the question. The labor trafficking, top industries. So peddling rings, traveling sales crews. I just want to say, my spidey senses are always on high alert for this stuff. People will come through our gift shop and magazines, chocolate bars, but they're not with a school. They're not with I'm always like, oh, what school are you with? Oh, do you have the sheet? Like when we get solicited for donations and things all the time. We're a downtown brick and mortar. But everybody's got a letter, this event is this or this is that. And these people don't have that stuff. Now, there's no way to know for sure, but I just had a group of kids come through, these girls, and they were not from our community, and they had candy bars, and I asked them lots of questions. They were selling candy bars so they could get instruments, musical instruments. And I'm like, oh, what school do you go to? Oh, we're homeschooled. There was one girl who was kind of the leader. She was older, and then a couple littler ones. I'm like, oh, you're homeschool. What group? Like, are you in the Hartford area? No, we're not. Oh, where are you from? So I asked questions and questions, and finally I said, you know what, girls? I'm not going to buy candy bars, but I am very worried about you. I am very concerned with what's going on right now. She's like, no. No, my mom, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, I would love your mom's phone number so I can call and confirm that you are okay. I said, because I'm going to tell you as a retail shop owner, when people send their kids, they're standing at the door. I look and wave, like kids are selling candy bars and stuff all the time. But mom's usually standing on the curb or outside the door, or somebody's there. They're just letting their kids do it on their own, right? So they can learn to talk to adults face to face and all of that. So we see this all the time. And these girls didn't have anybody. And so I gave them my card, and they're like, no, we're fine. We have, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, that's cool. But if you're not, like, I'm here for you because I'm concerned. And I explained a little bit why in their age group, in their age appropriateness, why I was concerned. So this is something that happens, that it can be kids, it can be adults, selling magazines, but you ask questions like, who are you with? Where's your letter? Where's your donation letter? Like, how do I know what group you're with? And you ask those kind of questions. Other top industries for labor trafficking: childcare, housekeeping, factory work, massage spas, construction, carnivals, and nail salons. I shouldn't laugh, but that just scares me. Like, remember all the carnivals when we were kids? Like, oh my gosh, we would just be talking to those carnies, and it was just like, when I think of it, like, so many of that is a very vulnerable. They're moving. Who knows how many people were being exploited in that? I don't know. Anyways, I don't know what happened there. That's weird. So what does sex trafficking look like in our community? Okay. Now, this is a 9-minute video, but I wanted this to play. This is the story. These are the stories of 4 sex trafficking victims in Wisconsin. 4 completely different stories, but this gives you a very good overview of what trafficking looks like in our community. And while you're watching this, think about the people, the community that you live in, the kids maybe that have come through your life, your friends, your kids' friends, your grandkids' friends, and just kind of keep an open mind as to where something like this may have been possible. And you know what? Some of us might even ourselves relate to a couple of these situations. So let's hope this video plays.
I'm Kimberly. I like poetry. I'm really into music. It helps me get away from the outside world. My mom had passed away when I was 10 years old. My father had custody of us, and he chose his girlfriend over me and my little sister and just up and left us in an apartment and never came back for weeks at a time. Our electricity went off, and that's when the lady who lived upstairs decided this was a prime opportunity for her. That's actually how it happened. I went to her. That's how it happened. I went to her and told her my electricity had been cut off, and me and my little sister didn't have no lights downstairs. And the lady told me, hey, if I do this, me and my little sister will never get separated. We'll have everything we need. We won't lose our place. And so I felt like what I was doing was to support my family, and it was an okay thing to do. Not really understanding that it really wasn't.
I was just a typical young girl that liked to play with Barbies, play basketball, and I ran track. Church too, I went to church, sung in a choir. Had 2 other siblings. I was the only girl.
Black version. I wouldn't be who I am without Caitlin, because Caitlin brings the girly out of me, and she makes me feel like I'm furious, like I can get whatever I need to done.
It was my sophomore year in high school. Me and my parents had an altercation. I had left. I decided to leave. I ran across some different type of people that I never thought they were, I thought they were friends. I met the girl at school. I thought she was my friend. That's when my life changed. I met the young lady. She introduced me to a pimp, and then eventually he introduced me to one of his friends.
To see someone that you love, someone that you call your sister, could go from just being this bubbly young lady, we're going places and we're happy and the relationship is different between her parents, to now it's she's not really around her parents, she's going out of town.
My son died on September 30th, 2016. He is a boy who was trafficked, but I also want you to remember that he was a beautiful young man.
He was super funny and outgoing. He loved art. He was super good at art.
Between his drawing and his writings, he really has quite a talent. I was in a verbally abusive marriage. My husband was an alcoholic. When I left him, it was good for the family to remove ourselves from that situation. Jeffrey was probably 4th or 5th grade. Jeffrey was teased, picked on a lot through middle school. He was just trying to figure out where he fit in, and to try to find his place.
I knew right away that he was doing drugs. He just got into the wrong group of kids. They strive so hard to fit into those groups, and when nobody gives them attention, they're going to seek for those friends that do give them attention.
There was a point in childhood that my parents divorced, so then my mom was a single mom, because my dad was just kind of not really in the picture. I was probably 15 when we moved here. So when I came up here to the schools, the transition, it was a hard transition. So I had dropped out at that time. And I did end up pregnant. Within the first few conversations, he was all about my life, and I opened up to him about it because, at the time I did not have very many people that I was in contact with anymore. And then, within a few weeks, it turned more into a sexual relationship. That went on for, a week or two before he brought up, trafficking me.
He took me to Grand Island, Nebraska. By then I'm 16. He exploited me. I was working at a club called Larry's, and at that time they allowed young girls to come dance as long as they had an ID. He supplied everything I needed. The ID, the fake social security number, the clothes, the whole 9 yards for me to go work at the club.
She eventually said, "Best friend, I'm stripping." And for me it was like, what? Why? And she's like, "I can't get any money."
The first time he exploited me, I didn't know what to do. I was just looking at the man I can't do this. And once I didn't, there was consequences afterwards.
At that point, I'd already been in it too long, and I was on the run from foster homes and group homes and wound up in a whole nother situation, and this time it was with an older gentleman. At first, he pretended I was something special compared to these other girls he had around, but really I was just the next person being manipulated. That was when I realized it was something different when I watched him beat girls, and then he started to beat me. When the abuse started happening and realizing that I was looking for love and that's not really what it was. That's when I realized it was the wrong thing.
Kind of his way of making money while he was on the road was either to sell drugs or to dance in clubs. So he was dancing in a club in Madison, and a man was outside of the club, and he said, I know that you're a minor, and I can help you out, and you can make a lot more money than what you're making right now, and I'll take care of everything you need. And of course Jeffrey's gonna say yes. He was down on his luck, he was living on his own, you know, really not having much, and so he went.
At the time, I actually was living in a hotel. I was broke down in the car, I was crying, and I'm like, you know, just being in that one room was just so congested. I just started crying, and he's like, you know, I can help you, you know, do you trust me? You know, I can introduce you to something that, you know, can change your life. You can get the house and get everything situated.
He told us that he was drugged up so much that he lost all concept of time. He recalls having sex with 10 women and being beat up at least twice during that time period that he was captive with them.
And you could tell that he wanted help. He wanted to be home. It's hard for me because I wish I could take his pain away, but I couldn't.
Do I dare put it back into slideshow mode? I think I'm going to keep it here. I've got some more videos, so I don't want to lose this. So I was promised a fill in the blank, right? Job, relationship, well, labor trafficking could be green cards, scholarship, college kids, that's something. But these traffickers are filling in the gap. Love, in this case, these cases, like drug addictions, whatever that blank line is, that need is, that's going to be exploited. Something I really think is just so important here are the myths and misconceptions of human trafficking, because in my 10 years that I've been, I'll get that out of the way, been doing this, I will have a conversation with somebody and just lay down the line exactly what it looks like and tell them some cases that I know of and situations, and the next thing I know, they're saying, well, that's why I grab my kid's hand really tight in Target so that they don't get trafficked. And so, yeah, we should watch our kids in Target. I've had my daughter hide underneath when she was little, scared the bejeebers out of me. But that's not what trafficking is. So if we're worried about sex trafficking, human trafficking, we have to understand what it is and not mix it with what it is not. So this is one of my favorites. Should I be suspicious if I see a white passenger van with tinted windows? Well, if it's following you and it looks creepy and there's weird people in it, yeah, you should be concerned. But the chances of that being a trafficker are next to nil. Like, it's probably something else creepy going on, but it's not necessarily trafficking. Okay, so for instance, this is in 2019, social media posts about men in white vans luring women for sex trafficking and selling their body parts goes viral. Facebook said it will limit the circulation of viral posts that are spreading a hoax story. So every once in a while, has anybody seen these posts about the white vans and the human trafficking? And every once in a while, I'll see these come through again. And they're all across the country, so people think, well, it must be true, you know, because I see it everywhere. But I hear the stories about, like, I'll see, the posts about my daughter was driving down the highway and a white van with tinted windows or something similar to that was following her, and she was so scared and she didn't want to pull off onto the, you know, she was just didn't know what to do. And all of those scenarios may be true, but they always say she was almost trafficked. Now, what did we just learn about trafficking? It's a process. It's a target. It's a grooming. It's an exploiting of vulnerabilities. It's a process. It's not chasing somebody down on the highway. Like, that's something else creepy, but it's not trafficking. Here's another one of my favorites. The zip tie. Has anybody heard of the zip ties on your doors or on whatever? So this is a real post that I took off social media. So apparently, I could have been a victim of human sex trafficking coming from a source who took a course on human trafficking precautions as a truck driver. So this guy is an expert, and he told her that she was almost trafficked. If this is true, then all I have to say is, well, I blocked out that part. I am so sketched out beyond belief. I noticed the zip ties, if you can't see it, zip ties on my tires back in late September after I got my brakes worked on and forgot to snip them off. I figured it was just something the mechanics left on after they did my brakes and forgot to take it off. What do I know about cars? This is really bugging me out. So this is the conversation on that post. Someone says, I have heard of the zip tie trafficking thing, but it's on car handles. She's correcting her, okay? Don't remove anything placed under your windshield wiper or note. It could be sprayed with some sort of knockout drug. All right, I've heard that one too. So somebody's telling her about more trafficking tricks. Yeah, that's exactly what she told me too. Man, am I glad I went to get milk after work. She probably saved my life. The next one is from her boyfriend. I crossed out everybody's names. He says, I told you that they broke your hubcap taking it off to do your brakes and just zip tied it back on. Nothing more, babe. It's good to stay vigilant, but I definitely think you are overthinking this one. Someone says, I've seen this type of story before, except the zip ties were left on a passenger side back door handle. Somebody else says, careful, girl, we already know people can go missing as adults, and not for nothing, you do have a child. I've seen this posted across the country, so I would be cautious. So then she says, oh, it was actually put on by my mechanic. It was zip ties, blah, blah, blah. So this is just one minuscule post that was like going crazy, and then that type of post will get posted. And I'll see these things come around every once in a while. They go viral, and it's always the same thing, basically. So what I want to talk about are what are some of the ways when you do see these posts. Like, I suggest trying to like either drop a comment, like I always, so that I don't get into a word Facebook war, word war on social media. I sometimes will just drop a link for something that is going to prove my point that I'm trying to make, and I'll just leave it at that with something from a resource. But some of the other ways, if there's anything that talks about something happening and there's this happening, and this guy was following this car, and the police, I've seen this too. The police, it's a police story. It's happened in Hartford, happened in Watertown. Call that police department. Call that county sheriff's department. Because many times people will name communities, but it's the same post I see over and over. So to flesh some of these stories out, if you ever see anything like that, don't share it. Instead, if you really want to know, if you're concerned about it, call law enforcement in that county and find out if they've had this reported. Because if it's been reported, because a lot of times people say, oh, I reported it too. I've done this. I've done the calls to the law enforcement, and they've never been reported. There's never been any reports of this stuff. Again, not saying these things can't happen, but it's not sex trafficking. So we have to understand how somebody becomes a victim of sex trafficking or human trafficking if we're going to prevent them. So if everybody's telling you, look for the girl in the red outfit, like she's the trafficking victim, that's what they look like. But really, it's the girl in the orange and the guy in the black shirt, that's really the trafficking victim. They're right in your communities. You're never going to see them because everybody's telling you to look at the woman or the person in the red outfit, right? We have to understand what it looks like. Human trafficking victims, okay, here's just another myth, quick. I'm just going to do a couple of these. Human trafficking victims will try to find help when they're in public. Well, we know that most trafficking victims don't even know they're being trafficked. They don't even know what that term is. I don't know any victims of trafficking, any survivors that were like, yeah, I knew what that term meant beforehand. No, they didn't. They didn't, just like the rest of us, a lot of us didn't. They didn't see that because they were manipulated and tricked. Oftentimes also, they're afraid to come forward and ask for help. That's why they're not coming forward for help. And that's why it's so important to recognize the indicators of human trafficking ourselves. So, how can I make a difference in my community? So learn the tactics a trafficker uses to trick victims. I know I have packets, and right next to me, you guys are right next to me, right? Join the movement. Do you have human trafficking stuff on your table? Join the movement. Yeah. So if you want resources, we've got resources because you need to learn about the tactics traffickers use to lure victims. They use the violence, manipulation, false promises of well-paying jobs, romantic relationships. This is in my packet. This has all of the potential warning signs that a child may be being groomed or a victim of trafficking, and behavior characteristics that pimps or traffickers display. So you see this person and that person together, it looks kind of fishy. This kind of flushes some of that out, and it's got all of the reporting that you can do there. You can also just stay informed and commit to watch for things that are unusual and report them. And when you report, you want to make sure you have the details. Make a list of things. Travel details. Where are they going? Nicknames or gang-related affiliation, if you know any of that information. Vehicle information. If you've seen something sketchy, a young girl, an older man, and she looks very scared and nervous, and he looks very controlling, things of that nature, and they get into a car and they drive away, or you're at a stoplight and something looks weird, take their information and report it. There's nothing wrong with reporting it. Write down the details, and here's the numbers. And in my packet and on that table, there's just lots of numbers, resources, the National Human Trafficking Hotline, and then the tip line is there. That's all out there. Okay, so, oops. So Kim, is Kim in here? Yeah. So since we started late, what is my time frame? Are we going later because we started?
We started at about 6:45, so we.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, we started pretty late.
An hour and a half. So.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to keep going. So yeah.
If anybody needs to leave,
yeah.
Feel free. If anybody needs to go to take a bathroom break,
yeah.
have at it.
Yeah. I know we started a little bit late, but I'm about halfway through. I'm more than about 3/4 of the way through.
Can I?
Yes. You have a question?
Just clarify a little bit when you were going through that description on the social media. You're just saying that when we see something like that, we shouldn't get all excited about it, or we should drop in. You were saying you dropped in some of your.
Okay, so you're talking about like.
Well, you were reading that dialogue of that one you took off a couple of years ago.
Yep.
I was trying to follow what you're trying to tell us to do about it.
Sure. I wasn't really trying to tell you to do anything. I was trying to have you understand that is something that is posted often of what, like, she was saying, I was almost trafficked. Yeah. This almost happened to me. But that wasn't true. She wasn't almost being trafficked. It was actually somebody just put zip.
And you mentioned about truckers in there, but isn't there a truckers group?
There is, Truckers Against Trafficking.
TAT.
Yes, TAT, yep.
We went to a Lake Mills presentation that they had a couple.
Yeah, that's a great organization. Good for you.
Okay, I'm just trying to clarify.
Absolutely, I'm glad you asked.
I don't want to take away your time.
No, I'm glad you asked. Okay. No, thank you. Yeah, no, yeah, Truckers Against Trafficking is a great resource. Is that the industry you work in?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay.
I didn't even know about it until I was at that presentation.
Because there's so many different professions that put you in that place for people who are being trafficked. Law enforcement, first responders, even more than law enforcement, maybe the first responders like fire and rescue or things like that, but also the medical professionals, truckers. They have those eyes on the road and can see things that a lot of us don't see. Yeah, there's a lot of people that have a specific professions that, there's a number that says, I think it's 87% of trafficking victims have made their way through the either the emergency room, at some point where they've been seen by a nurse or a doctor, and they had that opportunity maybe to see some red flags. And there's a whole website for that as well for medical professionals. So I'm going to transition a little bit to sextortion now because, again, a lot of the process and the grooming is all the same, but sextortion is a different kind of scam. So it's you have to understand how the sextortion scam works to be able to defend yourself from that or educate your kids on it. Sextortion is a form of sexual exploitation where children are threatened or blackmailed, most often with the possibility of sharing a nude image of them to the public, oftentimes one that they've sent, been tricked into sending, but also it can happen, again, with AI or these Nudify apps, it can be created. Sextortion, the target demographic has evolved. So this first video that we're going to see, it's just real quick. It happens super fast, about 2 minutes, if that. And, oops, yep, this is it. And notice how safe this environment starts out looking. Notice how happy she is, how safe she feels, and her mom, and see how fast things change. And then tell me if that kid was sitting at your kitchen table at the end of this video, if you wouldn't recognize something was happening.
Hi, Zach. Here's another video from my special guy. I can't believe we haven't talked all day. I wish you went to my school or a little closer so we could finally meet.
Hey, kiddo. Dinner in an hour. Don't spend too long on the phone.
Okay, I know you've been waiting for this for a while, so I wanted to give you something special. Is this okay?
Who are you? Why are you doing this?
So the target demographic used to be young teenage girls. I had moms tell me this almost exact story happened in their family. Just like this. And this was it was the younger girls, they wanted the content and they wanted more content and more content, right? But over the years now, or I should say, as the years have brought out like the Venmos, all the pay apps, the different pay apps, the target demographic has taken a really big shift, and it's gone to boys, 14 to 17, 13 to 17, and you're going to see a little bit how much it's really a lot different than how it used to be. I'm not saying that this doesn't happen still, but it's taken a turn. And again, sextortion right now, this is a trend scam that is like just huge, It's happening way more than people are talking about. I have heard so many stories from parents that call me. Have you reported? I always say, have you reported? They will not go to, most of them do not go to law enforcement. And I encourage them to. I encourage them to use the cyber tip line, which we're going to talk more about, but most of them have not. And they're afraid, they're embarrassed, because it's all about fear and shame. That's how these predators keep these people quiet. So Braden Bone is Wisconsin's most recent victim of suicide by sextortion in Wisconsin. We are dedicating our 2025 social media safety education in memory of him. Braden was a DC Everest, junior high school, loved his family, friends, music, baseball, kind-hearted, loved to make people laugh. He was a victim of sextortion. He died by suicide this March 5th. Right? His mom is committed to raise awareness and talk about this. The only reason I'm going to show you the next video is because she is committed and impassioned to get the word out there. Because in her words, Braden loved his life. Braden loved his friends. Braden loved his family. He didn't have the typical mental health red flags for suicide that we learned through QPR and things of that nature. Those types of red flags to look for. These types of sextortion cases happen overnight many times before you have a chance to see any of the red flags, and they don't have pre-existing mental health issues. Most of these kids, the trend went from the girls who are just looking to, for love and flirting with the boys, and then they send the picture, to the kids that are on the top of the world, the boys that are in sports, they have coaches, they have families, they have friends, they have everything to live for. That's the target demographic for this scam. It's totally different than human trafficking, typically. It's totally different than the other scam. They are the kids that are being scammed by this right now typically are wearing some sort of uniform. They are in sports, they are part of a church, and they get tricked into sending a photo and then threaten that they're going to share it with all the people that they respect. They're going to be humiliated and shamed. And from the words of Brittany here, he told her everything. She was that parent. They talked about everything. No topic was, she's like, sometimes way more than I wanted to know. But we talked about everything. They had a very open conversation. But he didn't know about this scam because she didn't know about this scam. And they are so good, they convinced them of all the things that we need to convince them of the other way. So you're going to listen to his mom, Brittany, tell us Braden's story. And I'm just hoping this is such a big, big topic right now that I'm just really hoping that this will resonate. Let's just hope that this works. Yes, it's going to work. She's sitting in Braden's bedroom, by the way.
My name is Brittany Bird, and I am here to share my family's story. March 4th of 2025 was a normal day like any other day. I went to work, my kids went to school. I had my son, Braden, come into my salon where I was doing his friend's hair, just so they could hang out a little bit. We spent the evening together. We were laughing. They were talking about going to the ski hill the next day because school might be canceled. So they had all these big plans to go to the ski hill. When we were driving home, my son Braden fell asleep in the front seat, and he laughed himself awake because he had been dreaming. And that was the last time that I heard my son laugh. March 5th, 2025, I went to wake him up and let him know that school had been canceled and he could go skiing. I walked downstairs and his alarm was going off, but he wasn't in his room. So I looked around and I found that my beautiful, bright 13-year-old son had taken his life. My husband and I called 911. We did compression. We knew he was gone. So we just kept asking why. Braden's smart. He loves his friends. He loves his family. Baseball season is starting next week. He was gonna go skiing that day. So why? None of it made sense until a police officer looked through our basement and they found that Braden had left a note. And the note said, "Make sure he gets caught. I'm so sorry. Everything's on my phone." That's when we found out that Braden had been targeted by online criminals who were extorting him for money. They contacted him through Facebook, pretended to be someone that had mutual friends, went by a script that was written by criminals, and scared my son to the point where he felt forced to take his own life. 3 days later, we celebrated my daughter's 9th birthday. And on the 13th, which is my 36th birthday, we celebrated the life of my sweet son. Braden was smart and kind and funny, so athletic and so gifted. He had plans for his life. He had plans for the future. And that was all taken from us, from a stranger that tricked him on social media. Parents, don't assume that your kids aren't going to do things that kids do. Let them know that you can fix it. And if your friends are telling you they think this is their only way out, tell someone. Tell someone, because I promise it can be okay.
So to date, this type of financial sextortion, this particular scam, has taken 32 kids with the exact same basic look. They're pretty much all sports athletes on top of the world, have everything to live for. And so many parents are left, just like Brittany, confused, unless they're lucky enough, which is a strange term, but lucky enough to find out why. Because many of these kids, this is, I'm sure, a low number, the families don't know why, because often the kids scrub their phones clean of this information and nothing is found. So 32 suicides across the United States have been reported as a direct result of sextortion scams. 48 suicides by sextortion internationally. And experts believe this is less than 5 to 10%. Like, this is an epidemic, these sextortion scams. That's why it's so important to understand, because it's a specific type of thing that happens very quickly. Almost all of these kids, it happened overnight, within about 5 to 7 hours. So there was no chance for mom or dad or anybody else to see signs or be of any help. 90% of sextortion victims right now, the trend are teen boys. So you see how that trend has totally shifted. The niche market is that they're scamming the kids with the most to lose. And Instagram and Snapchat are among some of the common ones for this particular scam, but it can be any app with a plat chat form. So this packet that I have on our table this is sextortion. What do you do? So I sent a nude and now I'm being threatened. What do I do? That packet's got everything you need in there to get educated about this topic. First thing you should do is stop responding. Take screenshots. you don't want to delete everything. You want to take screenshots, take down information. You can block them, but don't delete the app, or you're going to lose all the information. Law enforcement won't be able to investigate that, or won't be able to get that information. Obviously, don't send more images. Don't pay the money. Don't respond to the demands, and don't continue the conversation. So the number one question I hear from people is, well, if you don't send the money, won't they send those pictures out? Most of the time, those pictures never get sent. They threaten to send it, but they don't typically do. It can get sent, but they don't typically send. And on these sheets, there's all this information of who to contact. First thing you should do is call your local law enforcement. It expedites the process. You can call the cyber tip line, or you can do an online form, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But typically that then goes to cyber tip line, goes to National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and it has to be reviewed, and it goes then it gets sent. If it gets analyzed, it gets sent to the state, gets sent to the county, comes back to local law enforcement. So it will take longer to get to that point, but still, it's still a resource to use. Many people don't want to pick up the phone and call a law enforcement. Then at the very least, cyber tip line should be called. Really, what's important too, don't react, but respond. Right? Stay calm. I had a mom that sat through one of these presentations, and it was before we had any Wisconsin victims of sextortion, suicide by sextortion. Now we've got 2 families, both of which will be speaking at one of our presentations in August. But we've got 2 families. 2 years ago, last year, there was 1 family. 2 years, there was no families from Wisconsin. And I did these presentations monthly and multiple times throughout the month. And I just prayed, like, if I can just get this information out to the schools and as fast as I can, and other people keep sharing, like can we just avoid having this happen in our state? Now we have 2 families that we know of where they are, dealing with this. So this one mom says to me, she called me and said this sextortion, her son's friend was having this very scam happening to him. The kid told his friend, her son, if that makes sense. He said, dude, my mom was just talking about this to me. She was just at this presentation. He's like, don't respond. Don't send anything more. Don't do this. Let's call my mom. The mom stayed calm. That was the first thing she said to me. She's like, Wendy, because I was at you, I would have freaked out. The first thing I did was stay calm. This kid's parents were out of town. He was a 17-year-old kid. It was her son's best friend. She was kind of keeping an eye on him. He was old enough to stay. They were in school, staying in his own house. Mom and dad were on a vacation. So she just freaked out because she's feeling responsible for this kid. But she's like, because I had all the information, but mostly you kept talking about staying calm and respond. Don't react. So the first thing she did was just like, it's okay. Don't respond. Don't do anything more. This is what it is. This is called sextortion. They got the information. They learned she taught them about it. She's like, let's call, I will talk to your parents because it wasn't her place to call law enforcement. She called the parents to let them know that this was happening. Parents did not want them to report. The dad said, block it, delete it, move on. Again, didn't get reported. But at least that kid was safe. And the mom's like, I would have never known what to do. I'd have freaked out. So it's important to just kind of take a deep breath when this happens because you're so emotionally charged. You think you're going to know how to respond. Next thing is avoid punishment and blame. If this happens in your family or to somebody you know or whatever, particularly in your family, the last thing you want to do is, why would you send that picture? Because that's the first thing we want to say, in all honesty. But that's the last thing you should say. Because you have to remember, these kids are being tricked. They're being manipulated. They're being set up and tricked. It's not their fault. This is a crime that is happening against them. Seek professional help if you need it. I always encourage people to do that if they've been exploited this way. This is a very emotional trauma. Even though nothing happened to that family several of the families that I talked to, They all pretty much sought professional help because their kids were so close to something bad happen. The best prevention equals education and conversation. So like in the words of Brittany Bird, there's absolutely nothing they can do that can't be fixed. You have to let them know that ahead of time before this stuff happens. And to say it's not your fault. You know, you're not alone. There's help. So some of the resources I'm just going to tell you real quick. We've got the Internet Crimes Against Children. The Department of Justice is here, Wisconsin Department of Justice. Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force people here. Well, Jessica, right? People, you're by yourself, right? You're a team. But I love these cards that you guys came out with. So this is like all the information you need to know. I have them at my table. I'm sure you have them at your table in Spanish, in English. There's a QR code on the back. But basically what it says is what we just went through. Don't stop responding. Don't send money. Get help. And it's got the numbers to get help with. Block. Report. Do not delete. It's got a QR code that's going to take you to all the resources that you need. The National Human Trafficking Hotline, the Cyber Tip Line. Here's the card here that I'm holding up in my hand. All the kids that in your life should have these stuck in their pocket, stuck in their phone, stuck in their backpack, you know, in between their phone holders. The QR code is also going to take you to the website. If something were to happen, this is the thing that's so important too. There's so much in this topic, but it's important to know that if something happens, there are resources. It's not over. There is a way to get through this, and you're going to be past this one day. This is what we got to tell our kids. This is going to be just a moment of time in your life. These resources, it's called Take It Down. You can have the nudes online taken down through this process. It's a whole thing. You go online. You can do it all online. It asks you questions, you enter information, and it will basically search the internet for that photo that you want taken down. I know it's hard to understand how this scam can happen, and I love this resource that came out by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. You can scan it with your phone from there. The QR code works from there. But basically, we're not going to watch this video, but it will take you to a 7.5-minute video. It's kind of an interactive video that will help you understand basically what it feels like to be participating in a sextortion scam, to be the victim of a sextortion scam. So it follows a kid who's been targeted and somebody's trying to exploit them. So like I said, about a 7.5-minute video. I have a poster on my table out here too that you can scan. It looks just like this. So, but otherwise, that is really helpful to help you understand what it looks like. Okay, I know it's a lot of information. Again, everything, I hope you guys have taken these packets because everything I've talked about and everything you need to know about these topics, because I can't go into detail on everything like I would want to. I'd have you here for days, and trust me, I can talk on this topic for days. But some things to remember, report to the cyber tip line. If something happens, report it. Report it, report it. The best way is to go to your local law enforcement, but the second best way is go to the cyber tip line because at least it gets reported. There's special numbers for human trafficking tips to the FBI for help for people who are being exploited, trafficking situations, the National Human Trafficking Hotline. All that information is in those packets that you can find. I also have little cards with the National Human Trafficking Hotline. I was going to grab those. I didn't grab them. On my table as well. So it's like little things you can hook on your key ring with the National Human Trafficking Hotline number, things like that. Does anybody have any questions? I know this is a lot of information. Your brain is probably hurting, and I'm sorry. But there must be something that somebody wants to ask me about this topic. Well, I covered it all, didn't I? I gave you everything you needed. Were you about to ask me something? You look like it.
Do these scams, do you see it happening through texting as well? Is it more social media versus texting?
No, no, it's definitely texting. I mean, I wish I could go off onto the whole sexting topic. So yeah, like the thing is, a lot of times it can start out there. Typically, actually, they will contact them typically on social media because that's just a more public platform. Like people don't always have the cell phone, you know what I mean? They don't have that right away. They have, if a kid has their social media account public, then anybody can send them a message and reach out to them. Now, it may move to the texting, like, hey, can I have your digits? You know, and then they give them their phone number, and then it continues there. That can happen. Typically, it doesn't start there. It starts, you know, on social media. But also, don't forget gaming, the gaming platform. I don't talk enough about it. I had daughters who were not gamers. One of them now is, which is weird. She's in her late 20s. But anyways, I forget that. But the gaming, if there's a chat platform, that is also a very common avenue to, and again, sometimes the conversations start there and then they move to other platforms. Did that answer your question? Okay, yeah. Yeah.
Do you know of any, maybe it's an app or service or something that parents can use to like put on their kids' phones? Or,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I have something up here. There's a couple, there's different things. First of all, there are built-in safety features that you can use. Do I have that here? Oh yeah, here. I think I have. I think that this resource will get you to some things. But so there's built-in features like on the apps, on the phone, on the devices, on the computers, on the router, on your home. You can turn the internet off at night. You know, there's all sorts of things that are available that you already have for free. Now there's one called Bark, and I referred to that one earlier in this presentation, and that's something that you do have to pay for, but it will detect like suicidal comments, pictures. Like you can set it up to when a person calls your daughter or son's phone, that number or the text or the conversation comes right to you too. Like you see everything that they see. So you can do all sorts of things with some of those parenting apps. And I say to people, whatever question you have for parental safety features, again, another really big conversation, but you can talk to your cell phone providers. Also go to those places and ask them for some things. Or, you know, we can find restaurants online, can't we, pretty easily? Google search that stuff. Like just literally you will find so much information on that. Also go to the National Center for Human Trafficking, or National Center for National Center, Missing and Exploited Children, sorry, getting my two worlds crossed. Use this QR code. You can go to that website and they've got a plethora. That's really the only thing you need to learn everything about everything I talked about tonight. It's got so much information.
I wanted
Yes.
to ask you,
Yes.
So have you looked at like statistics on where, like in the whole U.S., where human trafficking was seen like more popularized?
Great question. Did everybody hear that? She's asking basically where the majority of trafficking happens, or where, like, what areas are more popular for human trafficking. Is that correct?
Yeah, or like if you looked at it.
Yeah. So there's a lot of research done on that, and it feels like that. So Milwaukee, Wisconsin is up there on the states that are popular for human trafficking. A lot of things have to do with highways, like moving sometimes, like, again, you don't have to be moved to be trafficked, but often those girls typically are moved from city to city to prevent them from getting caught. So there's lots of research to say, like, what states have more trafficking happening, what cities have more trafficking happening. But the problem with that is that the accuracy of those numbers is sketchy. What we do know is all 72 counties in Wisconsin has documented cases of human trafficking. What we know is that it's a very underreported crime, and we know that it's happening in all states, everywhere. So, so it's a great question, but it's a hard one to answer. Thank you for asking. Yes?
Do kids get treated for STDs, pregnancy, and do they get birth control?
Where? Like?
Victims.
Okay, so if they go for help, absolutely, they have all sorts of resources that are available. If somebody is looking to get help, yes, I'm not in the medical field, so I don't know if I can answer that entirely. But there is protocol for those victims and how they do those sort of exams. There's something called sexual assault nurse examiners that will do a forensic exam if, say, a victim decides they want to report and goes to law enforcement or goes to the hospital. There's a specific forensic exam that they will pull things off of their body, evidence, DNA, that will be used in their cases against their trafficker, and if they decide to go that route. So then in that case, I'm sure they would probably have a protocol set for treating them for particular things. I hope that answered that. Anybody else? Thanks everybody for coming. If you have any questions, I'll hang out here, but please take resources on your way out and from all the other tables as well. Thank you.